Good morning, everyone, and welcome. I'm Heather Andrews from Griffith Business School. It's great to see those of you who've joined the session so far. We've got quite a few others who've expressed an interest in today's session, so no doubt we'll have some others joining over the course of the next hour or so, or some who will instead choose to view the recording of the session. But let's get started so that we can make the most of your time and, of course, our wonderful presenter Emily's time over the next hour or so. So for those who I haven't yet had the opportunity to meet, as I say, my name's Heather Andrews and I coordinate the BusinessPLUS program at Griffith Business School, which, as most of you will know, is all about supporting Griffith Business School students to get involved in co-curricular activities that enrich your student experience and enhance your employability. This infographic is hopefully familiar to many of you, and it outlines the types of experiences that we encourage you to get involved in BusinessPLUS. So it includes things like career skills workshops, industry mentoring, access to work experience, community volunteering, and a wide range of other enrichment opportunities such as this session that you can get involved with over the course of your degree. So as many of you will know, as part of the program, you have access to your personal BusinessPLUS workbook in PebblePad, and I encourage you to add details of what you learn in today's session to your BusinessPLUS workbook. We'll send a follow-up email later with more information for any of you that have got questions about how to do that. On to this morning's session. Thanks to a connection between Dr. Robin Cameron, who some of you may know from Griffith's Department of Accounting, Economics and Finance, and the wonderful Georgia Lane, who you will get to meet in this session. She's hovering in the background, but she'll appear a bit later on. Georgia's the founder and president of Queensland-based business networking organisation Women of Influence, and she's introduced us to Emily Kucukalic, Managing Director of Brand New You, one of Australia's leading personal branding agencies, who's going to be your host at this morning's session, sharing her advice on how to make an effective first impression. So a little bit about Brand New You Group. Emily founded the group in 2009, and Brand New You delivers personal branding to some of the world's leading companies, and they count more than 35%, I believe, of the ASX 50 as its clients. Before founding Brand New You, Emily was the group head of brand and external relations at AGL Energy and a member of the executive team. And before joining AGL, she was the director of marketing and comms for EDS across Asia Pacific, including in Japan, China, and India. So we are in very excellent and very experienced hands. And it's my great pleasure on behalf of the BusinessPLUS program to hand you over to Emily, who'll take you through the rest of today's session. Thanks, Emily.
Thank you, Heather. And thank you everyone for taking the time out to listen to me today. As you could imagine, I'm used to doing these presentations face-to-face. And one of the things that's really good is when we are face-to-face is the opportunity for people to ask questions. So if you have questions, please pop them in the Q&A piece at the bottom of the page, and I will answer the questions as you have them, because it enables me to move around and give you the right information as I'm talking through various slides. I'm also quite new to kind of sharing screens, etc. I'm that sort of age of people who are quickly adapting to new technology. So forgive me if anything goes a bit awry there, but George is there to hold my hand. A little bit about why I started Brand New You, because this will help in the context of what we're going to talk about today. It was while I was at EDS, which was a large Fortune 500 professional services firm. And when we did deals, we were an IT outsourcing organisation. So, for example, Commonwealth Bank outsourced all their IT operations to EDS. When we did deals as EDS, the people that were really successful were the individuals who were really good at building their own personal brand to represent the corporate brand. And we would do a sale for us was like a couple of billion US dollars. So we worked out pretty quickly that in terms of branding the organisation, the most important area of the branding was the individual who represented the organisation. And it was this concept that people buy from people, they don't buy from companies or organisations. And it's the same when you're in a leadership role. People work for people, they don't work for companies. And as you move through your career, you will have the best jobs that you ever have, and the ones that you remember with the most fond memories are those where you've had just really fabulous bosses, because it's so much about the interpersonal connection versus the actual organisation. So I'm going to talk today a little bit about what personal branding is, and then move quickly into first impressions and how to think about building a first impression. What's a personal brand? I guess the most important thing about a personal brand is the idea of being really distinctive. We talk about this idea of being authentically you. If you kind of stick and stay true to what you are, you will inherently be distinctive because there is no one else the same as you. You want to think about being very deliberate about the impact that you want to leave. So Jeff Bezos describes your personal brand as the words people use to describe you when you're not in the room. And I guess that's about thinking about being very deliberate about the impact that you want to leave. So what are the words you'd like someone to say if you left the room? And then what does that person look, act, and behave like and speak like to leave that impression? So if the impression you want to leave is really creative, energetic, that person fronts up, dresses, speaks, demonstrates their strengths in a very different way to the person who wants to leave command, control, calm and collected kind of words. So thinking about being really deliberate about the impact that you want to leave. The other thing that's probably the most important in all branding is the concept of consistency. So actually at the heart of trust is consistency. We trust people who behave in the same way every time we see them, and it enables us to work well with them. So you want to think really a lot about how to consistently show your brand, so that what I see online, what I see via Zoom, what I meet when I meet the person looks, acts and feels the same way. What's really interesting with something like consistency is if we look at a brand like Donald Trump, what he's done, and who knows whether he did this consciously or unconsciously, he is consistently inconsistent. So what he has done throughout his presidency is push us and push the limits of the general population on what we expect a president to do and how we expect a president to behave. And he just keeps doing things so erratically that we forgive him a lot more than we would forgive another leader. So we start going, oh, Trump's at it again. Oh, that's just Trump. And it's quite interesting. He's managed to push the envelope so far with his behavior because he is consistently inconsistent. Now, it might not be the brand that you want to run with and might not work that well for your career, but you probably want to think about the fact that consistency is the most important. I just had a question asking if I could repeat the people work for people. So it's people work for people, not for organisations. And people buy from people, not from organisations. Okay. If we start to think about putting together our personal brand, you probably want to think about what a brand is. And for those of you that aren't studying marketing, this is going to be Marketing 101 very quickly. But brands, as we know them, corporate brands, they have two parts to them, two components. The first is a functional component. So all brands make something. They do something, that's what enables them to be a brand. So Subway makes takeaway sandwiches, Nike makes athletic leisure wear. That's the least competitive element of a brand. And in fact, Nike would never go out to market with, Nike just makes, buy your sneakers from Nike. It's not competitive. There are other brands that do it. The element or the area where the competitive element of the brand comes in is the emotional component. So we have a functional component, what the brand does, and an emotional component, how the brand makes you feel. Now in 2019, Nike spent $3.753 billion on what they call demand creation, which is creating a feeling, creating a demand of people wanting Nike. And what that investment pays off for is if you think about any teenage child and you try to tell them that a pair of sneakers from Big W that costs $13 is the same as a pair of sneakers from Nike that costs $200. Chances are they're made in the same factory. The teenager wants the $200 Nikes because of how Nike makes them feel. But about how, when they're wearing their Nikes, they feel strong, they feel powerful. People will like them. They'll have more friends. They don't necessarily say it that way, but that's the reason for it. And it's why you get taglines, etc. Now, the same thing goes for your personal brand. We have a functional component, what we do, and we have an emotional component, how we make people feel. The functional component gets you so far. So at the end of the day, you might get to the final 2 or 3 for a job interview. And that will be because, or for a position, that will be because basically 2 or 3 of you are functionally capable or functionally equal to each other. So you'll have the people who are employing will go, these 3 people can all do the job. The decision to purchase you or to hire you over and above someone else is emotional. The language, and I've sat in these meetings, the language that the people hiring will use is things like, I really like her. He'll fit into our culture. She has a great energy. That, he will be really driven and work really well and fire up the team. They're all the language of emotion. So you want to really think that the delta between a good and a great brand is how that brand makes people feel. So even when you're writing your CV, if you want to start thinking about your great first impression, most people's CVs lead with their function. Hire me because I got this mark, I won this prize, I worked here. You want to kind of flip it and say, I have this, I make people feel a certain way. And then, by the way, here's all the things I can do. So you want to think about how your CV or the bio on your LinkedIn page or the first bio page of your CV kind of really hooks someone in with how you actually make them feel. If we start to think about that in a sort of scientific manner, we use at BNY the 738-55 rule, which was created by a man called Albert Mehrabian, who is still a professor at UCLA in psych. And what he was doing was he was trying to measure the science of liking. He was looking at why we liked people, and he wanted to work out whether there was some science behind it. Why would he have cared about us liking people? Well, what he was looking at was he understood that when we like someone, we will buy from them, we will hire them, we will trust them, we will believe them, we are likely to pay them more. That was actually proven again recently by Amos Tversky and Daniel Kahneman in some of their research. So we know that when we like someone, we are more inclined to engage with them. Also, if we like someone, we will forgive them. So if Heather comes late to this session and I really like her, I'll just be like, oh, poor Heather, she must have got stuck in the traffic. If I don't like Heather and she comes late to this session, I'll roll my eyes and go, oh, Heather's always late. She must have known it was because I was presenting. So when we like people, we have such a bias towards them that it's really important to think about the science of it. So what Mehrabian found was my ability to make you like me is based 7% on content or what I say, 38% on how I say it, the way that I speak, and 55% on my physical presence. Now, it's quite interesting. Obviously, this model was built around face-to-face interactions and actually meeting someone. So in the world that we're in now, where everything's on Zoom and is likely to stay there for a significant period of time, the 55%, the physical presence is still there, but the physical presence is expanded in that you can only, or it's changed. Like, so my physical presence now is all about my costume, how I'm sitting, the way I fill up the room, the things I have behind me. And we might talk about that later because that's all part of your first impression, what you're sharing of yourself. But I don't have the ability to walk into a room, and the way we enter really significantly impacts first impressions. So we want to think about what that 55% does in a world of being online. The 38% is probably even more important when we're interacting via interfaces such as Zoom or Teams. So the voice bit is not about your accent. It's about the way that we speak. So Australians, people from Australia and New Zealand have a thing called the high-end inflection or high-rising terminal. And we exported that to the UK with Home and Away and Neighbours. And The Guardian did some research in the UK, and they found that you were 30% less likely to make it to the next round of an interview if you demonstrated the high-rising terminal. And what the high-rising terminal is it's when we go up at the end of every sentence. So we say, "Hi everyone from Griffith University. My name's Emily Kucukalic. I'm from Brand New You. I'm really excited to be here. And today I'm going to talk to you about personal branding." And what happens is I actually am slightly more likable, but I have significantly less authority. And the high-end inflection, the linguists in the world believe that Australians have created it on the back of, or it's formed a part of our culture, on the back of our cultural kind of graduation towards mateship. So it's an egalitarian way of speaking. So the thing with the high-end inflection is you want to become really aware of it so that you can use it when you need to and stop it when you don't want to do it. The other thing Australians do, and I'm from Western Australia, so we are worse than Queenslanders at this, but Western Australians and Queenslanders are probably two of the states that do this the most. Australians don't enunciate a lot, so we tend to, and again, there's a whole pile of theories around, we did this to stop the flies getting in our mouths, but we tend to not open our mouths a lot. So we tend to kind of talk a bit like this, and then we might like high-end inflect a little bit and go, "Hi, g'day everyone. I'm Emily, I'm from Australia." And that gets even more compounded. It makes it harder to understand. And then there's one more thing. We're not awesome when it comes to vocal voices of authority in Australia. The other thing that we do, which is relatively new and tends to be a younger generational thing. So any of you who are younger than me, basically, which is probably most of you, is a thing called the vocal fry. And it's a relatively new linguistic phenomenon, and it's believed to have been directly influenced by the Kardashians. I kid you not. And it's when we fry a word. So it's when I don't clip what I'm saying. So it's like, "Hi everyone. Right, like I'm here to talk to you about personal branding." And it's that really kind of, you fry out the words. For those of you who are familiar with Kath and Kim, that sort of purr and trrr and I don't know how thing is another version. It's like an older person's fry. Research has shown that people who fry their voice are considered significantly less intelligent and significantly less influential. So you want to be really wary of how your voice sounds, because so much authority comes from that 38%. We often have questions at this point, so I'll encourage you to ask any questions through the Q&A if you have any on that. Okay, so the next thing here that we're looking at is the 5 theories of self, which is this idea of, if I've started to make you think about what your personal brand is, you probably want to understand what it is you're branding. So what, in the same way that if I said to you, we're going to take a soft drink to market, we'd look at the soft drink and we'd think about the positives of the soft drink and what might make people want to buy it. It's the same thing with you as your personal brand. So we use a psych theory called the 5 theories of self, and it says there's 5 parts to me. The first is the authentic or empirical self, the me only I know. So there's parts of me that I take out socially, parts of me my family knows, parts of me I choose to share at work, But there's this whole thing, my authentic self, that only I know. You might want to call it your soul. It's like the base level of who you are, and you can't really change it. You can't do much with that. It's who you are. The next part is your historical or cultural self, the reasons for you. And that is everything that brought you to today. So that is your ethnic, religious, cultural background, where you grew up, where you went to school. When you leave university, it'll be Griffith University will be a part of your historical and cultural self. I was thinking about this yesterday when I was putting the slides together. And one of the things that's really interesting with the historical and cultural self at the moment is all of us, particularly, again, those younger than me, part of our historical and cultural self will be COVID and Corona. And they're already saying that there's a whole generation that they're going to be calling coronials in terms of psychodemographic reviews from a marketing perspective. So there's so many things that come about that then get attached to who we are. Again, you can't change your historical and cultural self. It's in the past. What is really important with it is it's where all biases sit. So people will have biases towards you based on their past knowledge of you. Now, not all biases are negative and not all biases are bad. So people will have positive biases when they see that you went to Griffith University if they've had a good experience with people from Griffith University before. So you want to be really aware of the positive and negative biases associated with your historical and cultural self and use them to your advantage when you're having that first meeting with someone. The next three parts we have much greater control over. So the theory says that I have this empirical self, this core me that's wrapped with history and culture, and then I start to add things to me, which is my extended self, in the hope that I will project something that gets closer to my ideal self. So Heather said to me when we were getting ready to go on today, she said, "Oh, you're wearing your Griffith University jacket." And I said, "Yeah, I am." I always wear the colours of who I'm presenting to. And that the idea there is that by attaching to myself or my extended self, the colours that you may have some kind of a connection with or some kind of a positive bias towards, you will inherently start to think of me as part of your extended self. The extended self is really interesting. It's very psych rich. What we choose to put on us and take off ourselves project so many things to the world. And the idea of this kind of what I do personally with this wearing the colours of who I present to, Westpac is one of my biggest clients and I have a red suit that I wear there. And, you know, it comes to a thing now where I will run into people at Westpac and they're like, "Oh, you're wearing your Westpac suit." And so it's been very successful. They have effectively started to think of me as part of their brand and part of their extended self. The idea is that when I put things on myself, I'm projecting something that gets closer to my ideal self. Now, again, thinking about the world that we're in today versus where we were 6 months ago, the extended self was a lot of people put things on themselves prior to Corona, extended self. So travel, if you think of people's Instagram feeds and what we valued, it was all about where you were going, where you were seeing, going to different places, photographing yourself in beautiful places, at restaurants, etc. What has been really interesting psychologically is some of those decisions about extended self are no longer useful, or they're no longer part of our extended self. People who spent their life traveling can no longer travel. And it's quite interesting watching how people are changing their ways that they present to people in terms of social media, and actually how many people are struggling with kind of reinventing their brand. I've got a question here from Troy Nielsen that says, "So would suits on men become homogenous?" It's an interesting question. I'm thinking that that's a question about, should I wear suits? I would say that we're doing some really interesting things in our costumes at the moment. Suits can be homogenous and have been used. Suits are like uniforms. So uniforms do two things. They put people in a group together. So they make us part of a collective, but they can also, uniforms also can make us conspicuous in that we stand out from other people. So a suit is important if it reflects your capabilities and your personal brand. So back to that idea of how you want to make people feel. I was doing some work with investment bankers at one of the biggest global investment banking firm in the world. And they were saying to me that they had lost a big deal because they had been asked to do an IPO for a startup. And the person who ran the startup was sort of a famous Steve Jobsy type character who kind of wore not necessarily no shoes, but wore the polo neck and the sneakers, etc. And the bankers rocked up in the same outfit, and they lost that remit because essentially in the organizational leader's mind, he wanted bankers to look like bankers. He wanted bankers, he needed the bankers to do the stuff he didn't know how to do or understand how to do. He understood how to be creative and quirky and innovative. He didn't need that in his bankers. He needed his bankers to be considered methodical, structured, disciplined. And so when his brand was sort of fundamentally challenged, he chose to move away. So you've got to think suits aren't about being homogenous, whether you should or shouldn't wear them. It's about a reflection of your personal brand. I hope that helped answer your question, Troy. Okay, so, and that kind of perfectly leads into the concept of biases. So in 1920, Edward Thorndike, who is considered the father of modern psychology, he actually taught Sigmund Freud, he came up with the term biases. So it's still, I guess it's 100 years old now, the concept of biases. And this was the test that he invented back then. And we found that no one ever sort of anywhere kind of fails it. And it says, I'd like you to meet Alan. He's intelligent, industrious, impulsive, critical, stubborn, and envious. Ben is envious, stubborn, critical, impulsive, industrious, and intelligent. Now, you would have all worked out that the words are the same. Without fail, everybody likes Alan better than Ben. And the reason is because of the bias and the bias halo effects. So humans place exponentially greater value. So we're kind of getting into this concept of a first impression now. Exponentially, it's been mapped, greater value on what we see first than what we see last. So Alan is leading with his strengths. So we like him because I've just looked at, there you go. I was reading a question to talk more about voice, which I can do in a minute. Alan is, because he leads with his strengths, we like him more than Ben. And it's also about this halo effect. So what happens is we go, oh, Alan's really clever and really hardworking. When we get to the first potentially negative part of his personality, we see that he's impulsive. So rather than going, oh, Alan's impulsive, we go, oh, Alan's so clever and so hardworking that he's just firing off ideas all the time. And he's not critical. He doesn't suffer fools. So there's this halo effect. The positive strengths that he leads with put a positive bias over the negative personality traits. Ben, however, starts with the bad ones. So he's envious, he's stubborn, he's critical. Most of us give up. Most of us are like, I'm done with Ben at that point. But if we push through and we finally get to industrious and intelligent, which are the two more positive elements of his character, they also have this bias halo effect, only it's sinister. So his industriousness becomes dangerous because he's so envious, stubborn, and critical. He's really hard working at that. And his intelligence is the intelligence you want to watch out for. Like, watch out for Ben. He's like really nasty. So you want to think about, from every point of interaction that you have with someone, particularly if you're looking for a job, what kind of a halo effect you're creating. From the, we know it's now 100% of all people that you apply to a role with, they will look at your online profile before they invite you in for an interview. So what are some of the biases they're going to have when they see you online? Is there consistency? So what I see online, does that look, act and feel like the person that I actually end up meeting? And also, am I leading with my strengths? Have I got the most important, most powerful parts of me up front? Because they will have that halo effect when I get to the parts of me that aren't necessarily as strong. So you always want to think about leading with your strengths because of the fact that we place exponentially greater value on what we see first, and also the fact that we will apply a halo over the next parts as well from a bias perspective. One of the things that I wanted to talk to you about as well, which is really important in first impressions, is this idea of potential. So this was an incredible study that looked at multiple different activities and different scenarios. And they were looking at whether humans have a preference for what something might be versus what it is. So potential over proof. So Kevin Shea, this was a real Facebook ad campaign about Kevin Shea, who's a real comedian in Boston. When they used the language of proof, everyone is talking about Kevin Shea, 8,500 clicks through. When they used the language of potential, by this time next year, everyone could be talking about Kevin Shea, 430,631 clicks through. Humans have exponentially greater, we place significantly greater value on what something might be than what it is. In this same study, they had participants pay NBA players an amount of money. They were NBA team managers. And they were given this example where there was one player who was a most valuable player, and they had 7 years statistics for him. So he was a proven player. Here's all his 7 years statistics. Then they had a rookie, and they had a projection of 7 years future playing statistics for the rookie. And across the board, the rookie was, and the statistics, the playing capabilities were the same. They were exactly the same. Across the board, the rookie was paid $1 million more than the proven player, because not only did people believe the projections, they assumed that they were underbaked. They assumed that he would be most likely to actually do better than what he was projected as. So you want to think about, when you're trying to create a first impression, how you can promote your potential. So again, that's that stuff that I was talking about with your CV, the same kind of thing where I was saying, have your emotional before your functional. It's the same with potential prior to proof. So, Emily has the potential to really add value to your business. She has added value in this way at other places. So the way you put potential in is use the word potential. It's all those things like this time next year, could be, might be, may, maybe, those kind of language, that kind of language. Particularly if you're just graduating from university, when I interview you for a role, I know you haven't done the job. So don't try to prove that you can. Prove that you have potential, because that's what I'm buying. I know that I know how to do the job in my organization, and I know that we can train you. But I'm looking for the next best salesperson or the next CEO. So I'm looking for, where can you grow? What kind of potential do you have? So you want to think about the costume of potential, the language of potential, how someone with potential moves, how they talk, that kind of thing, and actually using the language of potential. And sorry, I'm going to talk now about the concept of presence, because presence is how we physicalize potential. So we use this model, which was developed by a lady called, well, we drew the drawings, but a lady called Patsy Rodenberg talks about the concept of 3 circles of presence. Now, Patsy Rodenberg is considered at the moment the world's leading drama coach. She works with a lot of companies, acting companies, and also companies. She actually worked with Team Obama when Obama got elected. She came up with this concept of the fact that we all exist in 3 circles of presence, and we can all exist in 3 circles of presence. The thing that's really interesting is that we all default, relax, feel most comfortable in, protect ourselves in either the first or the third circle. So people who are naturally really happy in the first circle are what we might traditionally call introverts. They are people that tend to prefer to listen than to speak. They physically might be a bit smaller. They might sort of tend to kind of sit a bit more, have their head on the side, be sitting kind of, their energy is quite inward. They're thinking about the past. Someone who is naturally first circle is sitting there thinking, God, I probably should have read more about this before I came into this presentation. It's quite interesting. Maybe I could have looked up a few more things. So quite in the past. When you meet them or when you talk to them, often their words are sort of falling just shy of you. So I'm quite first circle now. I'm sort of talking to my keyboard and what I'm saying kind of lands just a little bit shy of you. They're very powerful in certain ways, but they often sort of will be quieter and sitting, listening. Third circle people, I'm very third circle. They're kind of big. They wear bright colors. They take up a lot of space. They are judging other people. So first circle people, if they're judging anyone, they're judging themselves. That's that whole in the past. Third circle people are kind of judging other people. If you don't like me, that's your fault because I'm awesome. They're thinking about the future. They're looking at their watch going, yep, okay, well, I've only got a few more minutes and then I've got to get on to the next thing. You can feel that they're moving ahead. What's quite interesting here is you can absolutely tell over a phone. You don't need to be looking at someone. You can tell whether they're in first or third circle, particularly if you know them. You know when someone is listening to you on the telephone. You know when they're doing something else. You know when they're reading something. You know when they're trying to get off the phone. Trying to get off the phone is very third. Reading something or doing an email is very first. And you know when they're not actually interacting with you. The second circle is the kind of magic circle, and it's the place where we have the most potential, because when we are present, we're not judging. I'm not judging you, and you're not judging me, because I'm just totally open. And it's quite hard to demonstrate this over this interface because I can't see you. But when you are actually with someone and they're fully present, there's this kind of unusual connection. You fall in love in the second circle. And the second circle is the circle of potential, because we know if I'm sitting here having this conference call like this, I'm very third circle, right? You know that person. I'm sort of looking over there. You know her. You know what she's capable of. If I'm sitting in quite first and I'm sort of, looking like that and clearly, wanting to go outside or something or thinking about where I should have been, you know that person too. But someone who's in second, who's like totally on, you don't know them, so therefore they have potential. You can't read them. You don't know what they're capable of. And so in many ways they're compelling. So you want to think about when you are doing job interviews, getting into that second circle and being really on and in the moment and engaged, because that is the place where you have the most potential. And we know that's what people are looking to buy. They're looking for people who have potential. So that's the three circles of presence. It's quite a powerful thing to think about. If we think about first impressions, I would normally give you prizes for the person who comes up with this. But I'm going to see if this works, Georgia. I'm going to do a quick poll. Anyone want to tell me how long they think it takes to make a first impression? Anyone want to go for a guess on that? Tick, 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 tick. Yep, we've got one answer. First 5 seconds from Alicia. Sorry, not Alicia, anonymous. Jodie Donnelly, seconds. Alicia, less than a second. Okay, Alicia got it right. It's 1/10 of a second. It's only very recently actually measured, and they were able to measure using an fMRI machine, and it was done by a guy called Alex Todorov. If you're interested in this stuff, he does some really interesting research. He's an associate professor at Princeton. He found that in 1/10 of a second, we do what we call thin slicing people. We make assessments about people, and we are across the board 90% accurate with them across the human race. They think it is what makes us apex predators. So what we can assess in 1/10 of a second is whether we trust someone, whether they have power, and whether they're kind. So even the way we hold our head. So if you had just come onto this session and I was just sitting here like this, you would immediately go, she has power, she's not kind, I don't trust her. But if I was sitting like this, you might think, she seems kind, I might trust her, don't know about her power. So we make these assessments and we're pretty quick at them. So you want to think about, the way you hold yourself, the way you sit, because those 1/10 of a second are really, really powerful, and we are 90% accurate at it. So if you want to project certain things, you've got a very short amount of time to show what you have. So another thing that we assess, it takes a little bit longer than 1/10 of a second, but it's definitely under 5. The next things we start to assess is openness. So we pretty quickly can decide whether someone is open or closed to ideas. And that's really important when you're coming in to a job interview. So one of the biggest mistakes I ever see, and we do a lot of work with people getting them ready to actually have interviews, is people spend so much time preparing, so much time learning about the company or the person that's interviewing them, that they are essentially closed when they come in. They're sitting there trying to get all their top 5 strengths out or their top 10 achievements out, instead of being in second circle and being really open to the person and responding to what they say. The answers to most interview questions are in the question and in the person who's asking it. So the more open you are, the more likely you are to be successful. And we judge openness really quickly. We like people who are open. And one of the things that we find, it's called the expressivity halo. And we just like people who are more expressive, more open, more, so that's why you want to think about the environment in which you're sitting in. You want light, you want to look like you're engaged, look like you're on, because we like people and we judge their openness and therefore their potential, because people who we think are open are the people that we think have growth mentalities and all of those kind of things, versus a closed person who I can't necessarily change. One of the other things that's really important when you first meet someone is to actually take time to connect with them. So this was a pretty interesting study that was conducted at Yale Graduate School, and they had groups of people who had to negotiate to an outcome. And one group were told time is money. So the group that went in and, time is money, get to an outcome really fast, only 55% of, and they'll put in pairs, only 55% of that first group got to an outcome. The second group were told to take as much time as they needed to get to know each other. So those pairs, 90% of people got to an outcome, and across the board, the outcomes were 18% more beneficial. That's 18% more beneficial to both parties. So this goes back to this concept of liking. When we like someone, we will be considerably more constructive in working with them. And we cannot like someone if we don't know them. So you want to take time to connect with someone. You want to, if you're having to do an interview via Zoom, you might make a comment about what the person's got in their background. You might say, oh, that looks like a great picture. Where is that from? And I might then say, oh, it's my friend. She's a photographer. It's a photo of a horse. You then try to think of ways to connect. You might like horses. I love horses. Or you might say, oh, I've always wanted to be a horse person. I'm just really scared of them. whatever it might be, but you want to try to find ways to connect with the individual so that we can start to actually create rapport, because I'm much more likely to be positively biased towards your answers to the harder questions. So take that time to actually connect with someone. It's a much more powerful way, and here's the stats, you will get to a better outcome. Another way to think about really creating a first impression is, these are from Keith Johnston, these tips. He is considered the father of improvisation. Very powerful skill set, improvisation. And the reason why is because basically every conversation you ever have with someone is an improvisation. The only thing you're sure of is what you're going to say. You don't know what someone's going to say back to you. You don't know how they're going to interpret what it is you've said. So this is, again, this idea, improvisation is that idea of being an open person. Open people can improvise, they can think on the spot, they can move with what you give them. And so Keith Johnston talks about this idea of saying yes. So being sort of saying yes to everything someone has to say. So for example, I'm in a job interview and they say, Emily, have you ever had any experience in surgery? Now, I haven't. So if I just go, no, I've never done anything in surgery, that conversation's finished and I haven't given them any bit about me and I haven't steered the conversation anywhere that's helpful for me. Now, instead of that, I might choose to go, wow, I would love to be able to say yes to that. And in fact, one day I hope to be able to do surgery. The thing that's most interesting for me in surgery is how things are scheduled. And I love how things are scheduled. And I think that makes me really good at being a project manager, because I love the idea of putting all kinds of parts together to create an outcome for the organization. So I have steered it to what I want to say. And I haven't said no, I haven't shut down their ideas. So this idea of saying yes to as much as you can, and not necessarily yes always, but the idea of being open and steering things can be a very powerful way to keep that, building that really positive first impression. You also want to think about how you listen to people. So remember I said one of the mistakes we see in job interviews is this idea of someone kind of memorizing their answers or what will make them clever. And they miss out on so much because they're not listening. They're thinking about, it's called next in line effect. They're thinking about what they're going to say next. Wilfred Bion is a very famous psychologist from England. And he says, you know, the purest form of listening is to listen without memory or desire. So not trying to get where you want to be and not trying to remember, just actually trying to be in that second circle and listening to what it is the person says. And so what you want to be really aware of, that's a filter, that picture. Probably need a better picture there. You want to be aware of the filters that you use when you listen to people. There's a lot of common filters, and probably the 5 most common are the confirmation filter. So that's the person who listens to others and goes, yeah, I knew that. Yep, I thought that was the case. Yep, I remember I read that somewhere else. So that's a confirmation filter. An assessment filter is one that says, oh, I can, you know, yep, that's right. Yep, that's right. No, that's not right. I know that's not right. I don't know why she's saying that. I just know that's not right. So I'm assessing the person. A value filter, trying, you know, what's Emily saying that I can use? Will this be valuable for my team? Will this help me in the future? A time-saving filter. Oh God, you know, how much more time have we got on this? Oh my God, it's 10 more minutes. I wish you'd just get to the point. So that's a filter that a lot of us use. And the last one is this idea of utility. How can I use this? So what happens when you're applying these filters is you're so busy going, oh, that point, I can use that and I can tell Tom, my friend, that, and we can use that. You miss all the next bits. So you want to be really, back to Wilfred Bion, you want to listen without memory or desire. You want to try to be really aware of the filters you use when you're listening to people, because again, trying to remove some of those will help you be really in the moment. And when you're in the moment, you will pick up all the nuances that someone's asking of you in their interaction with you and be able to react to them. Okay, so connecting with people, I talked a little bit about it before. This comes to that point of liking, is we are more likely to agree with people if we believe we have some kind of a connection with them. A man called Dr. Adam Galinsky termed the phrase psychological contagion, and he was doing tests or studies where he would bring people into a room and they would be put in pairs, and what he found was people would, if they had been told that they had a connection with someone, and he was using star signs. So myself and someone on the, Alicia, who answered the question correctly, Alicia and I were both told before the session that we were the same star sign. We would go in to the workshop and start to agree with each other. Even if I thought Alicia was actually not 100% right, I would start going, oh yeah, well she's a Virgo too. So that must be right. And even if I ticked a box to say, I don't really believe in star signs. So we tend to connect with people that we believe are similar to us. So one of the things you want to do when you first meet someone is try really hard to find things in common. And what that means is you have to share parts of yourself. You have to ask questions. Most people will give things away. Like I said, particularly with backgrounds, people will give things away in their background, things that matter to them, things that, they might give away where they are. And you might be able to say, wow, where are you? Oh, I've been there, whatever it might be. But you want to try to find these similarities. In the psychological contagion piece, the next level of the research was done by Amos Tversky and Daniel Kahneman. Kahneman, actually I think both of them, but Kahneman certainly, they basically invented behavioural economics, and they were the first psychologists to win Nobel Prize for economics. So really skilled guys. They were looking at this concept of connection, and they found that if you have a connection with someone and you are placed in stress, the connections get stronger. So if you guys are all in a room and someone says to you, you're all at business school in Griffith University, you kind of go, oh yeah, whatever, that's pretty smart. She's at Griffith University. Yeah, we're all there. But if two of you are on a bus that's under attack in Sierra Leone and someone says to you, hey, you both go to Griffith, you don't even need to be at business school, you will protect each other over and above other people. So you want to weave as many of these connections as you can with someone, because when something stressful happens, when the question that they ask is too hard for you, or you haven't got a prepared answer, because you've already created all these connections, I'm sitting there going, oh, Alicia's just like me. That's okay, Alicia, we'll go on to the next question, because I'm so positively predisposed towards her that I have this psychological, she's psychologically, the contagion's there, so she's impacted or affected me. So looking for connections is a very, very powerful way to enable you to influence the other person. And it's quite interesting actually at the moment with Corona, because Corona's doing two things. It's pulling people apart in that we can't physically be together, but it's putting people together in that everybody is facing something that is significantly changed in some form of stress. And so you'll find that the majority of your conversations with people when you first meet them is about Corona. And it's because humans, we're all trying to find a way to connect with each other at the moment when we can't necessarily touch or see each other. So connection is incredibly powerful, and it really is a key piece of influencing other people. I've got 5 minutes left, so I'll just do another slide, and then if you've got any questions, get them in now so that I can certainly answer anything that you have to ask and get you the answers that you need. So one of the things that it's quite old-fashioned is this idea of mimicry. And people who were trained in sales techniques in the past sort of 20 years were taught this concept of mirroring. So acting and moving the same way as the person that you're trying to influence. What is really interesting is only very recently for the world of psychology, I think it was 2004, we discovered that there is actually a mirroring neuron. We have mirroring neurons in our brains. And so we do like people who are really similar to us, and we respond well and we connect with people who mirror us. So it's a bit hard again to do via this interface, to actually mirror someone, because certainly I can't see you. But thinking about when you want to interact with people, and if they're sort of sitting like this, you might assess the situation and maybe kind of relax as well. Or you might walk in with a suit and tie on, and see that the other person isn't. So you might sort of say, oh, is it okay if I take my jacket off? I don't really like wearing ties. I wore it to give you respect, and you might find a way of connecting. So mirroring is a very powerful way to connect with people. Alicia, my friend Alicia, she's going to ask questions. She's just asked, curious about the last two theories of self. I don't think we covered these. So really what they are is they're sort of the outputs of the self, Alicia. So we've got the authentic, the historical and cultural, and the extended. The idea is that the two first ones are the core. Then I add things to it, the extended, with the aim that I will project something, fourth self, that gets closer to my ideal self, fifth self. So if you think about choosing to wear a sport uniform, I put my, oh, Georgia, help me, Gold Coast Suns, something like that. I put my Gold Coast jersey on to project to people what I think my ideal self is. So those last two theories of self are really the output from the first three. Anonymous, these are all really good points, things I must take note. How can I implement these in real life situations, especially as students entering industries with limited or no experience? Practice makes perfect. Yes, that is the first, is to kind of, my point to you would be, look at, think about all the things I've talked about. Some things will make more sense to you, so start with them. They're the right ones for you. Things that you can think that I really like that, I'll try that. Practice it at home, practice it on people, make little notes around. The biggest things for you, if you have limited or no experience and you're a student, is potential. It's so important. Learning how to say yes and being really aware of the bias halo and how what they see first will come all the way through to what the person is that they meet. While these are great, how can we find a way to remember and learn all of these with no experience? Yes, the next question is the idea, how do we get better at this? I can send out via Heather. We use the VIA Character Strength Survey. It's free. It was developed by Pennsylvania State University psychologists, so it's highly reputable. And what it does is it ranks they did a huge amount of research and determined that humans have 24 strengths and we all have them. And what this tool does, it takes about 15 minutes online. It ranks your strengths from 1 to 24, and your top 5 are the ones that are your signature strengths. So they help you start to think about what you want to lead with, what your personal brand is, what your CV looks like. They help you answer that question when someone says, what are your greatest strengths? You can say, look, I actually went and did this properly. So I'll send that link out through a Heather if you wanted to get access to that, and you can go online and find out what your strengths is. Okay, Jody, can you ever change someone's first impression successfully? Yes. The way to change a first impression is to own that you might have stuffed it up. To straight up say, hey, I think I probably gave you the wrong first impression. I came in like a bull in a china shop. Sometimes people think that I know, that I think I know all the answers. And to be honest, I was just really nervous. So that's how you can change someone's first impression, is to really think about what you think you did wrong and just own it. And the majority of people will forgive you, because people like people who know themselves and know what their weaknesses are. So if you can do that, that will be a really good way to own it up. Even if it is their bias, I think you mean that they're biased towards you, positively or negative. Jodie, sometimes you cannot make everyone like you. And if you have led with your strengths and they don't have a good first impression, move on and find someone who does. That's a really important part of personal brands. Brands have to stand for something. If they don't stand for something, you don't have a brand. And when you stand for something, not everyone is going to buy it or want it. That's okay, because you don't want to give your brand to someone who doesn't value what you stand for. So you can undo first impressions, but if someone is truly biased against you, just move on. There's so many other people. So Hemanta, about voice, I could go on for another hour and I'm out of time. So I am going to have to ask if I can come back and talk to you about voice. The big thing with voice really is that, get rid of that high-end inflection. We have a great tip, which is this idea of one thought, one breath. So really, when you want to talk to people, get each thought into one breath. But really, voice, it is such a big thing. There's so much stuff around breathing and how to get a great voice, but really happy to help you. And I would suggest you have a look at our website. We have a lot of stuff for free that's available on our website. And maybe if voice is popular, we can come back and talk about that. Thank you very much, everybody.